It's 3 p.m. and you're staring at your screen, but nothing is happening. Your brain feels like static, your body heavy as lead. The to-do list mocks you from the corner of your desk, and that familiar voice in your head starts whispering, "You're so lazy. Everyone else is getting things done. What's wrong with you?" You scroll through social media and see productivity gurus celebrating their 5 a.m. routines, their color-coded calendars, their seamless workflows. Meanwhile, you can barely muster the energy to respond to an email. The shame burns in your chest because you know you should be doing more, being more, achieving more. But here's what no one is telling you. That voice in your head isn't yours. That shame isn't natural. That exhaustion isn't personal failure. You're not unproductive because you're broken. You're not lazy because you lack character. You're not failing because you're weak. You're resisting, and that resistance might be the most intelligent thing your mind and body are doing right now. We live in what I call the exhaustion machine, a system so sophisticated, so invisible, that it has convinced you that your natural human rhythms are defects. It has turned your body's wisdom into pathology, your need for rest into guilt, your boundaries into barriers to success. This machine doesn't need whips or chains. It doesn't need bosses screaming or guards watching. It has something far more effective. It has convinced you to be your own oppressor. You wake up each day, put on the uniform of productivity, and march yourself to exhaustion, all while believing you chose this life. Today, we're going to dismantle this machine. We're going to understand how it works, why it's making you sick, and most importantly, how your so-called unproductivity might actually be your soul's way of protecting you from a system designed to consume everything you are. Take a deep breath. What you're about to hear will change how you see yourself, your tiredness, and your place in this world. You are not the problem. You never were. For centuries, power operated through visible force. There were kings and subjects, masters and slaves, bosses and workers. The lines were clear, the hierarchy obvious. If you were oppressed, you knew who was oppressing you. Michel Foucault called this disciplinary power. Someone told you what to do, and you did it or faced consequences. But that world is gone. What has replaced it is something far more insidious and far more effective. The exhaustion machine doesn't rule through force. It rules through seduction. It doesn't command, it invites. It doesn't threaten, it promises. The modern workplace tells you you're not an employee, you're a team member. You're not a worker, you're a family. You're not being exploited, you're being empowered. The language has changed, but the extraction remains the same. Your time, your energy, your creativity, your very life force, all feeding into a system that grows fat while you grow thin. But here's where it gets truly diabolical. The machine has convinced you that this extraction is your choice, that your exhaustion is your responsibility, that your burnout is your failure to manage stress properly, that your inability to keep up is a personal deficiency rather than a natural response to an unnatural system. You're told you have work-life balance when what you really have is work-life integration, which is just a fancy way of saying work has consumed your entire existence. Your bedroom becomes your office. Your vacation becomes a working retreat. Your rest becomes recovery time to work better tomorrow. The machine feeds on your belief that you are free, that you chose this, that at any moment you could choose differently. But when every choice leads to the same outcome, work, produce, optimize, repeat, is it really choice at all? This is the genius of the exhaustion machine. It has made you complicit in your own depletion. You're not just a victim of the system, you've become its most enthusiastic participant. You've internalized its values so completely that you can't tell where the machine ends and you begin. And when you finally collapse, when your body can't take another step, when your mind can't process another task, when your spirit can't pretend to be enthusiastic about another meaningless project, the machine has already prepared its response. You're not working hard enough. You're not managing your time effectively. You're not resilient enough. You're not enough. But what if the opposite is true? What if your exhaustion is not a sign of weakness, but a sign that something deeper in you is still alive? What if your inability to keep up is not a bug, but a feature? Your soul's way of saying, this is not sustainable. This is not human. This is not life. Let's talk about the most seductive lie of our time, that productivity equals worth, that your value as a human being can be measured by your output, that your right to exist is contingent on your ability to produce. This mythology has become so pervasive that it's invisible. It's the water we swim in, the air we breathe. From the moment you wake up, you're bombarded with messages about optimization, efficiency, life hacks, and getting more done in less time. Your phone tracks your steps, your sleep, your heart rate, turning your body into a performance dashboard. You're not just living your life, you're managing it. You're not just working, you're building your personal brand. You're not just relaxing, you're practicing self-care for better performance. Every moment must be justified. Every activity must serve a purpose. Every breath must move you closer to some goal. But here's what no one talks about. This mythology is killing you. Literally. Studies show that countries with the highest productivity also have the highest rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide. The correlation is not coincidental, it's causal. When you reduce human beings to their productive output, you create a world where only the machine matters, and the ghost in the machine, your soul, your spirit, your humanity, becomes expendable. You become a resource to be optimized rather than a person to be honored. The mythology tells you that if you're not producing, you're wasting time. If you're not optimizing, you're falling behind. If you're not growing, you're dying. But what if the opposite is true? What if the most productive thing you can do is to stop producing? What if the most optimized life is one that refuses to be optimized? Your body knows this. Your nervous system knows this. Your soul knows this. That's why you feel resistance when you try to force yourself into productivity. That's why you procrastinate when faced with meaningless tasks. That's why you feel exhausted even when you haven't done anything productive. Your unproductivity is not laziness, it's wisdom. It's your inner knowing that you are worth more than your output. It's your soul's refusal to be commodified. It's your humanity asserting itself against a system that would prefer you to be a machine. But the mythology is powerful, and it has tools to keep you in line. Guilt, shame, comparison, fear of falling behind, fear of being seen as lazy, fear of not mattering if you're not producing. These aren't natural feelings. They're manufactured responses designed to keep you feeding the machine. The gurus and experts who profit from this mythology will tell you that the solution is better time management, better habits, better systems. They'll sell you courses on productivity, workshops on efficiency, programs on optimization. They'll promise to help you become a better version of yourself, which really means a more productive version of yourself. But what if the solution isn't to become more productive? What if the solution is to question the entire premise that productivity equals worth? What if the solution is to remember that you were valuable before you ever produced anything, and you'll be valuable even if you never produce anything again? This is where the real rebellion begins, not in working harder or smarter, but in refusing to play the game at all, not in optimizing your life, but in choosing to live it, not in becoming more productive, but in becoming more human. Your body is not designed for constant productivity. Your nervous system is not built for perpetual optimization. Your brain is not meant to be always on, always available, always performing. For thousands of years, humans lived in natural rhythms. We worked when the sun was up and rested when it was down. We had seasons of activity and seasons of rest. We understood that life was cyclical, not linear. We knew that fallow periods were as important as productive periods. But the exhaustion machine has convinced you that these natural rhythms are inefficiencies to be overcome, that your need for rest is weakness to be conquered, that your desire for stillness is resistance to be broken. Here's what science tells us. When you push against your natural rhythms, your body pushes back. Your nervous system, designed to toggle between states of activation and rest, gets stuck in a state of chronic activation. Your stress hormones, meant to be released in short bursts during actual danger, remain elevated constantly. This is not a design flaw, it's a feature. Your body is trying to protect you from a system that would work you to death. Your exhaustion is not your enemy, it's your friend. It's your body's way of saying, enough, rest, recover. Remember who you are beneath all this doing. But instead of listening to this wisdom, you've been taught to override it. You drink coffee to push through fatigue. You take supplements to boost energy. You use technology to extend your working hours. You've declared war on your own biology. And your biology is fighting back. Depression rates have skyrocketed. Anxiety has become epidemic. Burnout has been classified as a medical condition. Your body is literally making you sick to protect you from a sick system. What you call procrastination might actually be your nervous system's way of forcing you to slow down. What you call lack of motivation might be your psyche's way of protecting you from meaningless work. What you call unproductivity might be your soul's way of saying, this is not the life I signed up for. Recent neuroscience research shows that the brain's default mode network, the areas active when you're not focused on a specific task, is crucial for creativity, self-reflection, and emotional processing. When you're constantly productive, constantly focused, constantly on, you're depriving your brain of the very states it needs to function optimally. The irony is that in trying to be more productive, you're actually becoming less creative, less innovative, less human. You're turning yourself into a machine, and machines don't create. They only execute. Your resistance to productivity is not a bug. It's a feature. It's your humanity asserting itself. It's your creativity demanding space. It's your soul insisting on its right to exist beyond its utility. How are you? Busy. When did this become the default response? When did being busy become a badge of honor? When did having no time become a status symbol? We live in a culture that has made busyness a virtue and rest a vice. Being busy means you're important, you're needed, you're successful. Having time means you're lazy, you're unsuccessful, you're not living up to your potential. But here's the truth. The cult of busy is a scam. It's a way to keep you trapped in the machine while making you feel grateful for the privilege. It's a way to extract maximum value from your life while convincing you that you're living your best life. The cult of busy tells you that if you're not overwhelmed, you're not working hard enough. If you're not stressed, you're not achieving enough. If you're not exhausted, you're not living enough. It has turned suffering into a virtue and peace into a luxury you can't afford. But here's what the cult doesn't want you to know. Busy is not productive. Busy is not successful. Busy is not living. Busy is just busy, motion without meaning, activity without purpose, doing without being. The most productive people in history were not the busiest. They were the ones who understood the power of focus, the importance of rest, the value of saying no. They understood that doing less but doing it better was more valuable than doing more but doing it poorly. The cult of busy has convinced you that you should be grateful for your exhaustion, that your sacrifice is noble, that your suffering is meaningful. But what if your exhaustion is not a sacrifice but a symptom? What if your suffering is not noble but unnecessary? What if your busyness is not meaningful but meaningless? What if the most radical thing you could do is to stop being busy? What if the most revolutionary act is to have time? What if the most productive thing you could do is to be unproductive? This is where your resistance becomes powerful. When you refuse to be busy for the sake of being busy, you reclaim your time. When you refuse to fill every moment with activity, you create space for life to happen. When you refuse to measure your worth by your output, you remember your inherent value. The cult of busy will tell you that you're wasting time, that you're falling behind, that you're not maximizing your potential. But what if wasting time is not waste, but wisdom? What if falling behind is not failure, but freedom? What if not maximizing your potential is not loss, but liberation? Let's talk about money, because at the heart of the exhaustion machine is an economic system that literally profits from your depletion. The economy needs you to be tired. It needs you to be too exhausted to question why you're working so hard for so little. It needs you to be too busy to notice how much of your life you're trading for survival. It needs you to be too depleted to imagine alternatives. Think about it. When you're exhausted, you spend money, you buy convenience, you purchase solutions, you pay for services you could do yourself if you had time and energy. The more depleted you are, the more dependent you become on the very system that's depleting you. The economy of exhaustion is a perfect closed loop. You work yourself to exhaustion to earn money, to buy things that temporarily alleviate your exhaustion so you can work more. You're too tired to cook, so you order takeout. You're too busy to clean, so you hire a service. You're too stressed to think, so you buy products that promise to optimize your life. But here's the deeper truth. The system needs you to believe that your exhaustion is your fault, that your inability to keep up is a personal failing, that your need for rest is a weakness. Because if you realize that your exhaustion is not a bug, but a feature of the system, you might stop participating. If you understood that your productivity is making other people rich while making you poor in spirit, you might refuse to be productive. If you grasped that your busyness is not building your dreams but funding someone else's, you might choose to be unproductive. Your resistance to productivity is not just personal, it's political. It's a refusal to participate in your own exploitation. It's a rejection of a system that values your labor more than your humanity. It's a revolution disguised as rest. The economy wants you to believe that you don't have a choice, that you have to participate, that there's no alternative. But what if there is? What if your unproductivity is not just personal healing, but social healing? What if your refusal to be exhausted is not just individual rebellion, but collective resistance? In nature, nothing is productive all the time. Trees have seasons of growth and seasons of dormancy. Bears hibernate. Seeds lie dormant in the ground. Even the earth itself has periods of rest. But the exhaustion machine has convinced you that you're different, that you should be spring all the time, that your natural cycles are inefficiencies to be overcome, that your need for winter is weakness to be conquered. What if winter is not the enemy of productivity, but its foundation? What if rest is not the opposite of work, but its prerequisite? What if your periods of apparent unproductivity are actually periods of deep preparation? The wisdom of winter teaches us that sometimes the most productive thing you can do is nothing. That sometimes growth requires rest. That sometimes the most important work happens in the dark, in the silence, in the spaces between doing. Your body knows this wisdom. Your nervous system knows this wisdom. Your soul knows this wisdom. That's why you feel the pull toward rest even when your mind tells you to keep going. That's why you crave stillness even when the world demands motion. That's why you resist productivity even when you're told it's the key to success. But we live in a culture that has forgotten the wisdom of winter. We've convinced ourselves that summer can last forever, that growth can be constant, that productivity can be infinite. We've turned life into a machine that runs on perpetual motion, and we wonder why we're breaking down. What if your exhaustion is not a sign that you're failing, but a sign that you're human? What if your need for rest is not a weakness, but a strength? What if your unproductive periods are not lost time, but sacred time? The wisdom of winter teaches us that death and rebirth are part of the same cycle, that in order to grow, sometimes we must first let go, that in order to create, sometimes we must first destroy, that in order to be productive, sometimes we must first be unproductive. Your resistance to the exhaustion machine is winter wisdom. It's your soul's way of saying, it's time to rest. It's time to recover. It's time to remember who you are beneath all this doing. Here's what I want you to understand. Your rest is not neutral. In a system that profits from your exhaustion, your rest is revolutionary. In a culture that measures worth by output, your being is radical. In a world that demands constant motion, your stillness is subversive. This is not about being lazy. This is not about giving up. This is about reclaiming your humanity from a system that would reduce you to a resource. This is about choosing life over lifestyle, being over doing, existence over productivity. The revolution of rest begins with permission. Permission to be tired, permission to be unproductive, permission to exist without justification, permission to be human in a system that prefers machines. It begins with recognizing that your worth is not tied to your output, that your value exists independent of your productivity, that you matter not because of what you do, but because of who you are. It begins with understanding that your exhaustion is not a personal failing, but a natural response to an unnatural system. That your resistance is not weakness, but wisdom. That your unproductivity is not laziness, but liberation. But here's the challenge. The revolution of rest is not comfortable. It requires you to sit with the discomfort of not doing. It requires you to face the anxiety of not being busy. It requires you to tolerate the guilt of not being productive. This discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something right. It's the withdrawal symptoms of a system you've been addicted to. It's the birth pangs of a new way of being. The revolution of rest is not about doing nothing forever. It's about creating space for life to happen. It's about remembering what matters beyond the metrics. It's about reconnecting with the parts of yourself that can't be measured, optimized, or monetized. When you rest, you're not just recovering from work, you're remembering who you are without work. When you're unproductive, you're not just avoiding tasks, you're accessing parts of yourself that only emerge in stillness. When you resist the machine, you're not just being difficult, you're being human. Your body has a rhythm, your mind has a rhythm, your soul has a rhythm. These rhythms are not inefficiencies to be overcome, they're wisdom to be honored. The exhaustion machine has tried to override these rhythms with artificial schedules, artificial deadlines, artificial urgency. It has tried to turn you into a machine that runs on constant power. But you're not a machine, you're a human being. Human beings have ultradian rhythms, natural cycles of about 90 minutes where we move between states of focus and rest. We have circadian rhythms that regulate our sleep and wake cycles. We have seasonal rhythms that affect our energy and mood. We have life rhythms that move us through periods of expansion and contraction, but the machine doesn't care about your rhythms. It wants you to be available 24/7, productive 365 days a year, optimized in all seasons. It wants to extract maximum value from your time without regard for your natural cycles. Your unproductivity might be your body's way of enforcing its natural rhythms. Your procrastination might be your psyche's way of protecting your creative cycles. Your resistance might be your soul's way of saying, this is not my pace, this is not my rhythm, this is not my life. Reclaiming your rhythm is not about finding the perfect schedule or the optimal routine. It's about listening to your body, your mind, your soul, and honoring what they're telling you. It's about trusting your natural wisdom over external demands. Some days you'll have energy and focus. Other days you'll feel slow and spacey. Some seasons you'll be creative and productive. Other seasons you'll be quiet and reflective. This is not a problem to be solved. It's a rhythm to be honored. The machine will tell you that inconsistency is unprofessional, that variability is unreliable, that natural rhythms are luxuries you can't afford. But what if consistency is overrated? What if reliability is just another word for predictability? What if natural rhythms are not luxuries, but necessities? When you align with your natural rhythms, you don't become less productive. You become more human. And humans, paradoxically, are more creative, more innovative, more alive when they're allowed to be human. What if your unproductivity is not a problem, but a gift? What if your resistance to the machine is not a bug, but a feature? What if your exhaustion is not a weakness, but a strength? Unproductivity gives you time. Time to think, time to feel, time to be. In a world that's constantly stealing your time, unproductivity is an act of theft, stealing back what was always yours. Unproductivity gives you space, space to breathe, space to dream, space to exist without purpose. In a world that fills every moment with meaning, unproductivity is an act of rebellion, creating space for life to happen. Unproductivity gives you perspective. When you step off the hamster wheel of constant doing, you can see the wheel for what it is. You can see how it's been spinning you in circles, keeping you busy but not taking you anywhere. Unproductivity gives you presence. When you're not constantly focused on the next task, the next goal, the next achievement, you can be present to what's happening now. You can notice the world around you, the people in your life, the feelings in your body. Unproductivity gives you possibility. When you're not locked into the machine's definition of success, you can imagine other ways of living. You can consider what you actually want, not what you think you should want. But here's what the machine doesn't want you to know. Unproductivity is not the opposite of productivity. It's the source of productivity. The most creative ideas come in moments of rest. The most innovative solutions emerge in spaces of silence. The most meaningful insights arrive when you're not trying to produce anything. Your unproductive moments are not lost time. They're found time. Time to remember who you are. Time to reconnect with what matters. Time to rest in your own existence without having to justify it. The gift of unproductivity is the gift of being human, of having thoughts that don't lead to action, of having feelings that don't serve a purpose, of having experiences that don't optimize anything, of simply existing without having to earn that existence. Resisting the exhaustion machine takes courage. It takes courage to be seen as lazy in a culture that worships productivity. It takes courage to be called unmotivated in a world that demands constant motion. It takes courage to be yourself in a system that wants you to be a machine. But here's what I want you to know. You already have this courage. You've been demonstrating it every time you felt resistance to meaningless work. Every time you procrastinated on tasks that don't align with your values. Every time you felt exhausted by the relentless pace of modern life. Your body has been showing courage by refusing to cooperate with unsustainable demands. Your mind has been showing courage by questioning the logic of constant productivity. Your soul has been showing courage by insisting on its right to exist beyond its utility. This courage is not comfortable. It's the courage to disappoint people who expect you to be always available. It's the courage to seem inefficient in a world that values efficiency above all else. It's the courage to be human in a system that prefers machines. But this courage is necessary, not just for you, but for all of us. Because every time someone refuses to participate in the exhaustion machine, they create space for others to do the same. Every time someone chooses rest over productivity, they give others permission to rest. Every time someone values being overdoing, they model a different way of living. Your resistance is not just personal, it's political. It's not just individual, it's collective. It's not just about you, it's about the kind of world we want to create. The courage to resist is the courage to imagine alternatives, to believe that there's another way to live, to trust that your worth is not tied to your output, to know that your humanity is not negotiable. This courage is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. It's the courage to say no when everything in you has been trained to say yes. It's the courage to rest when the world demands motion. It's the courage to be unproductive when productivity is the only value that matters.